Hi guys, this video is going to look at our flexibility training dot point. Now our learn about for this dot point is asking you to look at static flexibility, dynamic and ballistic flexibility. Flexibility is important for a number of reasons. It helps to prevent injury, it's good for injury rehabilitation, it improves skill execution or improves your biomechanical efficiency if you like. It minimizes post-exercise muscle soreness and also helps to reduce musculoskeletal discomfort that might result through poor postural developments. Flexibility is affected by a number of different things, such as your age. So the older you are, the less flexible you tend to be. Gender, if you're a female, you're more likely to be flexible than a male. Temperature, the warmer you are, the more flexible you are, which is why it's important for you to warm up before you do any kind of stretching or flexibility training. Flexibility is also really specific, so it only works around specific joints that are being stretched. So if I touch my toes, for example, that's stretching my hamstrings, and therefore it's only really going to benefit my knees, and my hip flexibility is not going to benefit anything else in my body. So we come now to the first little dash point, which is static stretching. Now, static stretching is probably the most common, and it's when you gradually extend the length of the muscle until you get to a point where it's uncomfortable. You then hold that position for about 10 to 30 seconds. And that kind of stretching is really good for sports where you have to hold poses for a long period of time that require stretching. So things like gymnastics or dance, where you might be required to do the splits and hold a pose with the splits for a while. It's very good to do some static stretching for stuff like that. Dynamic flexibility training or dynamic stretching involves slow controlled movements through the full range of motion. That can be things like a walking lunge, it can be things like twisting as you do things, open the gates that you might do for your warm-up. They're kinds of examples of dynamic stretching. The intensity can be varied for dynamic flexibility training by increasing the range of motion, by increasing the speed of the movement, by increasing the force of the movement, or even by just increasing the number of movements that you're doing. Now, this kind of flexibility training is really good for pretty much every sport where you're moving, which is really every sport. So you're looking at cricket, bowling, AFL, rugby league, any sport where you're moving, dynamic flexibility is going to be very useful for you. The last one for flexibility is ballistic. Ballistic stretching involves repeated movements which generally use bouncing to gain an extra stretch. Now, this is often used in sports like basketball, high jump, or volleyball that involve that stretch shortening cycle that you looked at in the anaerobic plyometrics section. And so flexibility, if plyometrics is good for your sport for training, then there's a good chance that ballistic stretching will be the type of stretching that might be used for you. However, ballistic stretching can be a bit more dangerous than the other forms of stretching, and so it's important to make sure it's supervised and done correctly. Don't forget, within flexibility, I know we've looked at the dash points of static stretching, of dynamic stretching, and of ballistic stretching, but don't forget your P&F stretching, which you looked at back in factors affecting performance. Now, when it comes to measuring flexibility, it's always joint specific. So if I do a sit and reach test, I'm only measuring the flexibility at my hips, okay, and my lower back. I'm not measuring the flexibility of my shoulders or of my neck, of my entire vertebra. I'm not measuring the flexibility of my ankles. You have to make sure you have specific tests for the specific joints. When it comes to safety, you need to make sure you're doing some good warm-ups before you do flexibility, because it will increase your flexibility. Stretching no further than the muscles can go without pain, so that's very key. And not aiming to really get to that point where you're excessively flexible, where you can bend yourself over backwards and all that, because that then produces instability around the joint and can cause further injury or can cause new injury.